It's no secret that Rosh Hashanah is a celebration of the birthday, the beginning of the world. But can I let you in on what is a secret? Essentially, a secret. Even as Rosh Hashanah is known in our tradition as Yom Harat Olam, the day of the world's birth, there is a rabbinic tradition. It's an ancient tradition. It comes to us from a 5th century source known as Pesikta de Rav Kahana, which posits that Rosh Hashanah, which we celebrate on the first day of the Hebrew month of Tishrei, this tradition tells us that it's not actually the day on which the world came into being, or if you will, the day on which God said, "Let there be light." That happened, according to this semi-secret tradition, but it's a true tradition. That happened, according to this teaching, 6 days ago, on the 25th day of the month of Elul, the month we just concluded, which was, if you will, this past Friday. Now, this all but secret teaching, but it's true that it exists and it's part of our tradition. This teaching says that Rosh Hashanah, this day, is the day on which Adam, the first human being, was fashioned out of the earth, which is how Adam came by his name, for Adamah means earth. According to this tradition from Pesikta de Rav Kahana, on Rosh Hashanah we celebrate the birthday of humanity, the start of the human race and the existence of every human being on earth. And what do we learn? What did we hear chanted this morning about the nature of human beings? We learned that alone among all of the animals, among all the creatures, great and small, with whom we share the animal kingdom, what do we learn? We learn that human beings, as Anitra chanted so beautifully for us, we alone, among all that lives on earth, human beings alone, were created B'Tselem Elohim, in the divine image. It's a really powerful idea. B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of the divine. This term only appears 3 times in the entire Hebrew Bible, and all of them in the first 9 chapters of Genesis. For the rest of the Bible, when human beings are referenced, we are either called Nefesh Chaya, living souls, or, and that's a designation we share with all the other animals, Nefesh Chaya, or we are referred to as possessing Kavod, a type of honor or glory that human beings alone have, but that we share with our Creator. But only in these first opening words of creation, of Genesis, are human beings described as B'Tselem Elohim, in the image and likeness of the divine. And we should note that when human beings are referred to as B'Tselem Elohim, it's not just an adjective that describes human beings, but rather that phrase describes the entire person. Not just our soul or the divine spark of which we speak or the intangible essence of an individual. When the Torah describes human beings as B'Tselem Elohim, that phrase refers to the individual human being in our entirety. B'Tselem Elohim encompasses everything. A quick survey. No hands are necessary, but play along. If you were to imagine or were to argue for the greatest teaching in the Torah, what might you suggest is that teaching? In the late 1st and early 2nd centuries, this was an important question. And the prevailing opinion was, and perhaps many here will still agree, that the greatest teaching in the entirety of the Torah was V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself, which is, of course, the basis for the golden rule, which appears in every culture of which we are aware. But there was a rabbi named Ben Azai, and Ben Azai went in a different direction, went against the grain. Ben Azai held that God's greatest teaching in the entire Torah is the fact that God created human beings, B'Tselem Elohim, in the divine image. Because to be created B'Tselem Elohim, according to Ben Azai, means that God, just as God created the world, so can we do the same. Just as human beings were created by God with an aspirational sense of self, such that we strive to be God-like, or be holy for the Lord your God is holy, so can you and I aspirationally create ourselves, this community, our world, anew. And so it is that the great 20th century theologian Martin Buber taught that every human being's foremost task is the actualization of their own unique, unprecedented, and never recurring potentialities. Or, if you will, in the more simple words of 20th century sage and philosopher Rav Joseph Soloveitchik, the most fundamental principle in a human life is that a person must create him or herself. So deeply was this idea that on Rosh Hashanah, even as we celebrate Harat Olam, the birth of the world, so deeply entrenched is this idea in Jewish consciousness that we can create ourselves. So are we this day enjoined to celebrate our own creation and the inherent potential we each possess to create ourselves anew. So are we encouraged to celebrate humanity and, by extension, the communities we create, even as we celebrate the world entire. So deeply has this cherished idea become part and parcel of what we celebrate on Rosh Hashanah, that over the generations, some creative rabbinic sages have suggested that on Rosh Hashanah our patriarch Abraham was born. Not on the first Rosh Hashanah, of course, but there are some who have suggested over the centuries that on Rosh Hashanah Abraham, the first Jew, was born, and that today is not only therefore Adam's birthday and Abraham's birthday, but that there are still others who maintain that our patriarch Jacob was also, that is to say, Abraham's grandson Jacob was also born on Rosh Hashanah. It's interesting, for in these ways Rosh Hashanah becomes far more than the birthday of the world. For by assigning first Adam and then Abraham and then Jacob to this day, through an imaginative act of what I call hermeneutical chutzpah, the tradition's message becomes clear. Even as we celebrate the world's birth on Rosh Hashanah, so can this day be for each of us a sacred personal day of reflection and self-recreation, such that Rosh Hashanah may be for each of us an opportunity to recreate ourselves, to be better than we were yesterday or last year, to improve our congregational community and our wider communities as well. There is a wonderful story with which I will conclude, wherein at the end of Rosh Hashanah services, at which there has been so much positive feeling about the possibilities that are so much a part of the first day of a new year, even as we gather within a broken world. According to this story, a loyal Jew, after the service, approaches the rabbi. This individual, in spite of the upbeat mood of the day, this individual is clearly frustrated by the state of the world's affairs. Who among us does not resonate to the lament? I heard what you said, the worshiper begins as he approaches the rabbi. I heard what you said about Rosh Hashanah being a celebration of God's creation. But honestly, he continues, tell me, Rabbi, how could God have created a world such as this? Why, the fellow continued, why, I could have created a better one, more just, more peaceful, if I had just done it myself. The rabbi didn't hesitate. Exactly, he responded. And so for what are you waiting? I believe in you. You can, indeed we each can, make our world a little bit better. And so let us begin on this holy day by creating ourselves and our congregation, our community, our world itself anew. Shana Tova.